Hello gamers, welcome to my reading. I'm gonna be doing my best to follow this. I'm totally winging it, so we are going to begin our art.
Now where could my pipe be?
Silly Garfield.
Garfield?
And beautiful strip. Thank you, Jim Davis. That's your birthday? Wow, that's pretty cool. Alright. Okay, so this is where I mute it and then put on the music that I have here. Alright. When I was 18 years old, I saw for the first time in my life, I saw a vision of clarity. I saw a comic strip, 3-panel comic strip that, though simple as it seemed, changed me, changed my being, changed who I am, made me who I am, enlightened. The strip. Oh, wait. No more than maybe a month and a half since its inception, since becoming into existence. And there it was before me in print. I saw it, a comic strip. What was it called? Garfield. The story here is of a man, a plain man. He's John, but he's more than that. I will get to this later, but first, let us say he is John, plain man. And there's a cat, Garfield. This is the nature of the world here. When I see the world, the politics, the future, satellites in space, and the people who put them there, you could look at everything as a man and a cat, two beings in harmony and at war. For this strip I saw about this man, John, and the cat, Garfield, you see. Yes. It's about everything. All the little comic is, lo and behold, not so little anymore. So yes, when I was 18, I saw the comic, and it hit me all at once. Its power. I clipped it, and every day I looked at it and I said, okay, let me look at this here. What is it doing to me? Why is it so powerful? John Arbuckle, he sits there, legs crossed, comfortable in his home as he reads his newspaper. News of the world, perhaps. And he extends his fingers, lightly, delicately taps his fingers at the end of the table, and he feels for something. What is it? Something he needs. It's not there. And he looks up, slightly cockeyed, and he thinks, his newspaper in his lap now, and he thinks this. Now where could my pipe be? I always come to this because I was a young man. I'm older now. I still have the secrets, the answers. So this question rings true. John looks at me, thinks, now where could my pipe be? And then it happens. You see it, it's almost like a divine intervention. Suddenly, it's there. And it overpowers you. A cat is smoking a pipe. And it is the man's pipe. It is John's pipe. But the cat, this cat, Garfield, smoking the pipe. And from afar, and from someplace near but not clear, the man calls out, John calls out, He's shocked. Garfield, he shouts. Garfield. That's the cat's name. But let's take a step back. Let's examine this from all sides, all perspectives. And when I first came across this comic strip, I was at my father's house. A newspaper had arrived, and I picked it up for him. I brought it inside. I organized it sections for him, and then yes, comic strip section fell out from somewhere in the middle and landed on the kitchen floor. Picked up the pages and I saw up somewhere near the top of the strip, just like John, I was wearing an aquamarine shirt, and I thought, interesting. I'll have to see this later. I slipped out the comic and I held on to it. And 5 days later, I re-examined it. And it gripped me. I need to find more about this. The information I had was minimal. But enough. An orange cat named Garfield. Okay. That seemed to be the, linchpin of this whole operation, yes. Another clue. A signature at the bottom right corner. A man's name. Jim Davis. Yes, I'm onto it for sure. So, 1. Garfield, orange cat. And 2. Jim Davis, the creator of this cat. And that curiously plain man. I did not know at the time his name was John. The strip, you see, had no mention of this man's name, and I'd never seen it before. But I had the clues. Jim Davis, Garfield. And then I saw more. I spotted the tiny copyright in the upper left corner. Copyright 1978 to... What is this? Copyright belongs to Paws Incorporated. I used a local library mail service to track down the information I was looking for. Jim Davis, a cartoonist, had created a comic strip about a cat, Garfield, and a man, John Arbuckle. Well, from that point on, I made sure to read the comic strips. Though as I read each one, each day passed, strips seemed to resonate with me less and less. I sent letters to Paws Incorporated, long letters, pages upon pages, asking if Mr. Jim Davis could somehow publish just the one comic over and over again. It would be meditative, I wrote, the strength of that. Did you imagine? But no response. The strips lost their power, and eventually I stopped reading, but I did not want my perceptions diluted, so I vowed to read the pipe strip over and over again. That's what I call it, the pipe strip. The pipe strip. Everything about it is perfect. I can only describe it as a miracle creation. Something came together, the elements aligned, and it was like comets. Cosmic orchestra that is up there over your head. The immense, enormous void is working all for one thing, to tell you one thing: gas and rock and purity and nothing. And I will say this, when I see the pipe strip, and I mean every single time I look at the lines, the colors, the shapes that make up the 3-panel comic, I see perfection. Do I find perfection in many things? Some things, I would say. Some things are perfect. And this is one of them. I can look up at the tuft of hair on John Arbuckle's head. It is the perfect shade. The purple pipe in Garfield's mouth. How could a mere mortal even make this? I have a theory about Jim Davis. After copious research, and yes, of course, now we have the internet and this information is readily available, but Jim Davis, he used his life experiences to influence his comic. Like I mentioned before, none of them seem to be the weight of the pipe strip. But you have to wonder about a man who is able to even just once create a perfect form, a literally flawless execution of art, brilliance, just as an award. I think there's a spiritual element at work. Now, I've seen my share of bad times, and when you have something, well, it's just emotions and neurons in your brain, but something tells you it's the truth. Truth's radiant light. Garfield the cat. Neurons in my brain. It's harmony, you see. It's John, it's Garfield. It's truly harmony. A continuous, looping, everlasting harmony. The lavender chair, the brown end table, the salmon-colored walls, the floor's green carpeting. Garfield is hunched, perched, perhaps with the pipe stuck firmly between his jowls. His tail curls around. It's more than shapes, too, because Okay, stay with me. I've done this experiment several times. You take the strip. You trace only the base elements. You can do anything. You can simplify the shapes down to just blobs, just outlines, but it still makes sense. You can replace the blobs with magazine cutouts of other things. Replace John Arbuckle with a car parked in a driveway sideways. Cut out of that magazine, stick it in. Replace them in there with a second panel with a food processor. Okay, now we put in a picture of a planet on the third panel over Garfield. Still works. These are universal proportions. I don't know how best to explain why it works. I've studied the pipe strip and analyzed John and Garfield's proportions against several universal mathematical constants. E, pi, the golden ratio, fine bomb constants, and so on. It's surprising, scary even, how things align. You can take just tiny pieces of the strip. For instance, John's elbow from the second panel. Take that and project it back over John's entire shape for the second panel, and you'll see near perfect Fibonacci sequences emerge. Eerie to me. It makes you wonder if the presence of a deity or something larger had at work. There's no doubt in my mind that Jim Davis is a smart man. Jim Davis is capable of anything. He is remarkable, but this is so far beyond that. I think we might see that this work of art is revered and respected in years to come. Jim Davis is possibly a new master of the craft, a genius of the eye. They very well may say the same things about Jim Davis in 500 years that we say about the great philosophical and artistical masters from centuries ago. Jim Davis is a modern-day Socrates or Da Vinci, mixing both the striking visual beauty with the classical, daring, unheard of intellect. Look, he combines these things to make profoundly simple expressions. This pipe strip is a masterpiece. The pipe strip. His masterpiece. And it is a masterpiece and a marvel. I often look at Garfield's killer pose in that strip. He is poised and statuesque, and his cat stare is reminiscent of a fiery glaze often found in religious iconography. But still, his eyes are playful, lying somewhere between the solemn father expression in Rembrandt's Return of the Prodigal Son and the coy smirk in Da Vinci's Saint John the Baptist. His ears stick up, signifying a piqued readiness. It's as if he could, at any moment, pounce. He is, after all, a close relative of the distant and mighty jungle cats of Africa that could leap after prey. You can see the power drawn into Garfield's hind quarters. Powerful haunches, indeed. The third panel, and I'm just saying this now, this is just coming to me now, the third panel of the pipe strip is essentially a microcosm of the entire strip itself. All the power dynamics, the struggle for superiority, right? Who has the pipe? Where is the pipe? All of that is drawn, built, layered into Garfield's iconic pose here. You can see it, the curl of his tail. Garfield's ear whiskers stick up at the end, smoke billows upward, drawing the eye upward. Increasing scope. I'm just amazed, really, that after 33 years of reading and analyzing the same comic strip, I'm able to find new dimensions. It's a testament to the work. For 6 years, I delved into tobacco research because can a cat smoke? This is a metaphysical question. Yes. Can any cat smoke? Do we know? Can just Garfield smoke? The research says no. Nicotine poisoning can kill animals, especially household pets, and all it takes is the nicotine found in a single lit cigarette. Surely John's pipe holds a substantial amount of tobacco, and it's true that pets living in the homes of smokers are nearly 25% more likely to develop some form of cancer, most likely due to secondhand smoke. But these are facts of smoking and its tolls on our world. But after visiting 2 tobacco pressing plants in Virginia and the Philip Morris cigarette manufacturing facility, I came no closer to cracking the meaning. Looking for any sign. A detective of a homicide case has to look at every angle, so I'm always taking apart the pipe strip, focused on every minutia, every detail of the strip, John Arbuckle's clothing. Sorry. I have replicas. I'm an expert in textiles, so you see, this smoking thing was a hang-up for me, but it was the statement there. So, this is the key, the breakthrough. The pipe is not a pipe, really. Obviously, there's symbolism at work here. I saw that from the beginning, and I looked at the literal aspects of the strip to gain its insight in metaphors at play. I worked at a newspaper printing press for 18 months in the late 1980s. I was learning the literal to inform the gestural, the subliteral, the in-between. John reading the newspaper means so much more than just John reading the newspaper. But how could you ever hope to decipher the puzzle without knowing everything there is to know about newspapers? Okay. For example, John holds his newspaper with his left hand, thumb, gripping the interior. I learned that this particular grip here, the newspaper grip the 19th century aristocrats, and the aristocrat grip was a point of content that influenced the decision to move forward with prohibition in the United States in the earlier 20th century. So, John's hand position is much more than that. It is a comment on class war and the resulting reactionary culture. But I don't know about the aristocratic newspaper grip until I came across some microfiche archives in the printing press. It's about information. You have to take it apart. And the breakthrough on the smoking cat came late. Just 8 years ago, actually. Smoking cat is an industry term. It is what the smoking industry calls a tattletale teenager who tells his friends after they've all tried smoking for the first time. And is actually a foreign translation, bastardization of the term smoking rat. But the phrase was confused when secret documents went back and forth between China and America. These documents are still secret. The only reason I know about the term is because I know a man, my friend. Let's call him Timothy. Yeah, it's a fake name for his protection. Timothy worked for Philip Morris for 16 years and has seen the documents. And when he told me, I was an aha moment. He said, "But how? How could this cartoonist, Jim Davis, know that this obscure term for the mid-70s used exclusively by a few cigarette companies? This is still a mystery to me, but I connect the dots by noting Jim Davis's childhood experiences on a farm. He must have seen something. What could it be?" Timothy went to me and to tell me that there was one particular smoking cat, a boy from, yes, Indiana, a boy named Ernie Barknuckle, who became a thorn in the side of the tobacco companies for a couple years. He did more than just tattle to his parents. Family took legal action and eventually received a huge settlement payout. But that name, all too similar. John? Eugene Barnacle? John Arbuckle. John Davis must have seen this, must have used this. There's more here. Ernie Barnacle spent nearly half of that settlement money on experimental medical procedures to cure his impotence. He was impotent! So, he was a smoking cat with a metaphorical pipe that did not work. Are you starting to see my layers here? This is exciting stuff. You start to see the whole picture here, and that it informs the work. It's just remarkable. Jim Davis took these raw ideas, these pieces, and he transformed them into smart social commentary that is all so ravishingly beautiful. I have cried. I've cried over this piece. It's just gets my soul. I try to explain this to people. I have the newspaper articles about Ernie Barguckle. People have fought me on this. They don't see it, or they're close-minded. How could a comic strip about a cat smoking a pipe mean any more than that? But it is more. And when I feel spiritual, I start to think existentially. I see this comic. Here's something from 1981 that I wrote thinking about the implications of this strip, that it's just an excerpt here. There's more before and after, but this part is the essence to me. If a comic about a cat smoking a pipe can be the only thing in the universe, then maybe this is the strongest evidence for that. Many of you say, "Oh, but I am not blind. I have never been blind." But when you truly see, you will understand just how truly blind you once were to even think it right to say that you were not blind. What does a blind man see? Blackness? Darkness? Blankness? Blank darkness? Dark blankness? The absence of things, quite literally no thing, no things, nothings? You see, nothing. And I bring you into the light. A cat has your pipe. You've been blind. Do you understand this? The cat has your pipe. You can't fully immerse yourself. You don't have the light. You don't have the radiance, the radical light, the radically radiant light of truth and truth's belonging love, the nature of light, the loving, truthful radiance. So don't be so bold and make bold statements. I know of you. The cat has your pipe. The cat has your pipe. Remember that. That writing, well, it's kind of rough. Kind of an eerie 80s feel, and I see that, but I'm still proud of it. Sometimes I imagine that it is in the editorial column in the newspaper that John Arbuckle's reading. It's an exercise in recursion, like a vortex that opens up. It's like you hold two mirrors up to each other. One is reality and the other is a cartoon strip. Let's see here. Oh yes. I must bring this up, because I think surely Jim Davis is again speaking on multiple levels by including the details set before us in the comic. Notice the glimpse of John Arbuckle's foot in the first panel. The size of the shoe would indicate that maybe the man just has small feet. But a deeper investigation takes us into the foot-binding rituals of certain Asian cultures, inflicted usually on the women for the desire of men. This practice was incredibly painful and crippling. Aha! Mr. Davis is here, presenting us with a man, or rather, man who engages in foot-binding, a body modification for women on top of being without his pipe, or impotent. This is a man facing extreme inner turmoil. The panels tell that story subconsciously. Notice the background wall shading in the first panel points inwards towards John in the second panel. And the sharp tapered at the end of the purple pipe in the third frame also points at John in the second panel, inward. The eye is drawn to the center panel. You can connect these points and draw a triangle across the panels, and this triangle will align with the reoriented points of John's collar. This is majestic work, and to uncover this hidden order is bliss like I've ever known. Comforting in an empty world. I can't help but to read the thought bubble over and over again. Now where could my pipe be? Now, where could my pipe be? It is a profound question. Why am I here? What is my purpose? It is the reflection of self-examination here. It is facing the dust, the misery of a cold, careless universe. You can feel the weight of it. But where could my pipe be? One imagines the author, Jim Davis, is nearly teetering on the edge of insanity. His rationality is lucidity hovering over the void. And he seeks truth. You can see it In the line quality of the drawings, the thoughtful, controlled outlines mixed with the occasional chaotic scribbles at the work in the shadows of Garfield's dark stripes. It's almost as if Garfield is chaos himself. Yes, he is the embodiment of chaos, disorder, hatred, fear, thievery, death, destruction, desolation. There are things Garfield represents. He stole the pipe. He sits with his back to John. Garfield, this chaos cat. Garfield has turned his back to everything. Everyone. One recalls the great existential forces of literature. Camus' Mersault, Kafka's Gregor Samsa, or Sartre's Antoinette I can't read that. Garfield the cat sees the hopelessness of life, which, yes. This is why Jim Davis has chosen smoking. It represents a recklessness, a disregard for what some would define as the beauty of life. Garfield may die from nicotine. He may not. He defies life. He sits defiant, saying nothing, but looking as if he could say, "Then let me die. It does not matter. It does not matter." And we are faced with this. Could John behave the same? Is John the glimmer of hope? Seems to be unsure. Again, his question, now where could my pipe be? Indicates that he is wrestling with his own existence. Center panel centers the issue. And again, this harkens to the many great religious works of art. I'm talking about the pipe strip in relations to religion. It is interesting to assign the roles of God and anti-God, or as many know him to be the devil, or a much larger scale, simply the forces of good and evil. Garfield, the thief cat, the malicious, he is the devil, placed to the right. And note, two forms of John. John to the left, still innocent, still draped in delight of the lack of knowledge. He is the humans in the Garden of Eden. He feels for his pipe. He has yet to eat from the tree. And Garfield, the sinister serpent. And notice how Jim Davis has framed this. The center John is locked in a struggle between his innocence and his knowledge of the truth, knowledge of the existence of evil. It's stunning. The great struggle, the struggle that transcends time, and Jim Davis floats over all of this as creator, as God of sorts of his own right, and he presents cautionary messages to us all. It is as if he is speaking from high, and he is saying unto our awaiting ears, where will you be when the cat reveals himself? I can tell you where you'll be. You'll have a choice. You can face endless suffering and eternal misery. You can be forced and beaten down as barbarians who claw at each other just for a view of salvation. They'll tear your eyeballs out and rip your gizzards from end to end. They worship this cat, this false idol, this evil, horrible cat. Do not be seduced by the cat and the pipe. Garfield. Thy name is a mask of the demons of hell, something like this. And those listening, it is a stark reminder. Follow the path of the first panel, John. Be humble, be grateful, honor the law, and honor thyself. Be true and be good, and no harm will come to you. Pray for salvation, and it will be granted unto you. Be like John Arbuckle as he lowers his head. Be like John Arbuckle as he lowers his paper, as he turns his head. Bow with John Arbuckle and praise unto the creator Jim Davis. And banish Demon Garfield from your life. So what is all this? What am I saying? Well, what does this all mean? Why is this one why is it one comic strip so important to me? And why do I feel the need to share this? Obligation. I have an obligation to you all. This is a redemption. This is a belief in redemption. A sacrifice of all the obvious trappings of false modern life. Look at the simplicity in this strip, in the pipe strip. Look at the simple clothes John wears. Look at his simple, basic furniture. No adornments on the wall. Even the very pipe his cat Garfield stole. It is plain, modest pipe, and I have adapted this way of life. It speaks to me. In our times, well, you don't need me to point out the hyperbole of our times. You have children being born 8 or 9 at a time. You have more money being spent on a single Hollywood movie than some nations can spend? Feeding their starving people? Torture. Distrust. Look around you. It's overwhelming. What can you contribute? And every day I look in the mirror and I hold this comic strip up to the mirror and I look in the mirror at this little comic strip. Be humble. Be thankful. It is a reminder. Be respectful. You are a statue. You are fragile. And when you break, when you shatter, where will those pieces go? Ask. Ask this question. Will you ask? Humankind is only as great as you. You, the individual. It begins and ends with you. You must treat this expedition, this search, this life with reverence and intensity found only in the smallest sticks, the littlest leaf, the tiniest stone, the most minuscule grain of sand on a beach of millions, billions. This is the secret. Do you want the pipe? Do you want to know where the pipe has gone? You ask yourself, you ask. Now where could my pipe be? When I was a young man, remember now, I first saw this comic when I was 8 years old, ages ago, but I was youthful, vibrant. For weeks, I denied. I couldn't hide that comic strip was having such a profound effect on me. I was much like John Arbuckle. In this middle panel, he says, "Now where could my pipe be?" You could look into his eyes, half-lowered eyes, and you think to yourself, "Now, John, surely you cannot be this naive. This is nothing new for you." And if you've read more of Garfield comic strips by Jim Davis, you understand what I'm saying now. Garfield the cat does things like this all the time. He'll take things from drawing, food, items, anything. This is his very nature. And so you see... Oops, a little bit ahead. You see this, and you want to say, "John Arbuckle, come now. You are lying to yourself. You are lying to yourself and to all of us. And if you pretend not to have any idea where your pipe is gone, perhaps you think you've left it somewhere else, but you're not so forgetful. You're lying to yourself. Yes, you are lying to yourself, John Arbuckle. You know that Garfield has the pipe somewhere. Deep down, you know this. You don't even need to think the question. And that was me when I saw the strip. 1 week passed, and each morning I'd open my drawer and slam it shut again. I would look at the comic. I'd pause. I'd think, "Oh no, I don't need this comic. I don't need to look at it. Don't need it." I was lying to myself. I did need it. It's cathartic. You give in. And that is the transition from the second panel to life, to the third panel of life. It is simple story structure, the passage from the second act to the third, the twilight of things. John gives into his suspicions. He knows the truth. He's always known the truth. He yells out, "Garfield, Garfield, Garfield!" And it's like pressure from a steam valve being released when he speaks the truth. Psh. So it's like this. When I speak about the truth, the light, the radiance, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. This is the essence of the brilliant work of art, the practical mixing, meeting, agreeing with the spiritual. It is all here. But spirituality is not an easy thing to confront. You might find yourself able to wrap your mind around a simple math problem or a basic newspaper article, but intellect is much less subjective. What is spirituality? And how have I found spiritual peace and serenity in Garfield? A long time ago, after I encountered the pipe strip, I spent a long time, as I mentioned before, soul searching. When something impacts you or alters your very perception so greatly that there's a long period of confusion, recovery time, as if you don't know who you are. And that can be a scary prospect, especially if you thought you had a good grasp on that sort of thing. Imagine if Jim Davis did not know who he was. Would he be capable of shaping the cultural landscape as he's done? No. Of course he wouldn't. And how about his characters? What if Jim Davis suddenly woke up and didn't know who he was? What if, oh shit, he couldn't take the informed decisions accurately depict Garfield's personality because of he could no longer specify or create boundaries of Garfield's behavior? What kind of comic would that be, you see? In this comic, and yes, I was disoriented, and if I didn't reconcile this issue with myself, what kind of person would I be? Undoubtedly, dire circumstances. But remember, this is not a math problem. This is not an article. This is not something I could just figure out. And as skeptical as I was, I realized that faith and spirituality were avenues that required exploring. At first, I tried long nights reading Garfield by candlelight, aromatic meditation settings while thinking of Garfield, but nothing snapped, nothing clicked. I felt lost, but I kept it up. I hired a shaman and a young personal yogi Sheikh guru, Avram Dab Singh Sahib. I pushed and pushed, determined to find myself. And then a miracle happened. Upon retrieving my morning paper to clip the Garfield comic, I noticed a young girl selling lemonade 2 houses down. Sat, occupied at her stand. She had no customers in sight. So I approached, and I saw she was coloring. I looked at her drawing. 3 rectangular boxes. A man in a blue shirt, an orange cat. I knew what this was. Even in her crude scribbles, I knew exactly what this was. She was drawing a Garfield comic. I looked at her words. I saw that in her strip, John asked Garfield to retrieve a newspaper. Ha, funny, since I'd done just that myself. Garfield is sarcastic, but agrees to. He returns and calls John... What? He returns and calls John Sahib. John exclaims that the paper is all chewed up, but Garfield says, and I quote, Sahib asks fish, paper is wet. Sahib asks cat, paper is holy. I remember the words and I ran back to my house. And I thought, how odd that Sahib shows up in the strip and my spiritual advisor's name is Avram Dab Singh Sahib. Coincidence, surely, but nonetheless, I spent the next 16 hours poring through my Garfield comics, looking at from the strips the young girl had been coloring. I couldn't find it, and I eventually fell asleep right on my kitchen table. The next morning, I retrieved my paper again, flipped my Garfield comic. Date was July 12th, 1983. There it was. Sahib strip in all of its glory. The girl had been drawing the next day's strip. So I ran out of my house. I ran back to where she was, but she was gone. And in place of the lemonade stand was a for sale sign. They'd moved out. I rushed back to my house to call Avram, but I was informed that he'd moved away as well. I reeled for several hours, and then it all connected for me. It was meant to be. It was meant to be this way. Jim Davis, John, Garfield. It was meant to be this way for me. They move to the forefront and everything else fades away. Everything else The girl, the lemonade stand, Avram Dub Singh Sahib, it all existed to show me the way. When I'd found the way, everything else went away. And it was a beautiful miracle. And if July 27, 1978, the day I first saw the pipe strip, was the first day of my life, then that day, July 12th, 1983, was the second day of my life. I've never looked back. Garfield has transformed me. I am now a man born anew because of Garfield. And I was in my mid-30s when I was interviewed for a documentary. It was a documentary on the subject of cat behavior. Now, I've had cats my whole life. I've had 3 cats now, and at the time of this documentary interview, I'd had 4 cats. I sat down for the interview and was joined by a veterinarian who specialized in felines. Dr. Carolyn Wilmotz was her name, I believe. And the doctor discussed color blindness in animals and how it affects their behavior. She specifically brought up the fact that cats are red-green colorblind. They can see colors, but they can't tell the difference between red and green. And look at the color choice of the strip here. Garfield sits on a green floor behind a pinkish-red wall. I hear this, and I immediately pull a copy of the comic strip from my wallet to show the doctor. I move so fast, I'm sure I nearly scared her. I point at the paper and I say, like this, look, it is here, this cat, this Garfield, he's colorblind, he must be. This must be the answer here, like this. As overexcited as I was, I managed to take in her response. She said, yes, a cat in this room would have a hard time differentiating the wall from the floor. Add to that cat's known in spatial confusion, and you have the makings of a cat rage room. Now, she informed me this isn't exactly common knowledge among cat owners, but a seasoned cat owner or someone particularly perceptive would have picked up on it. So, what's incredible here is not only is Garfield's behavior symbolic of the devil and the evil constructs of the world, but it is also rooted in the science, in scientific fact. Look at that. You can't spell fact without cat. Just a little joke there. Kidding around, just wordplay. And you can't spell track without cat. I digress. It is established here that Garfield is in a rage, an ultimate rage of fury and hatred caused by colorblindness. We know the what, we know the why, but let us examine the how. The how of this rage is particularly interesting. We've looked at his posture and called it powerful, in control, statuesque, etc., etc. Composed rage. It's peculiar, and I've talked to a number of psychologists and psychiatrists and even a couple of anger management therapists about this concept. Could we see this kind of behavior in a human? Is Garfield representative of something more specific than just chaos and rage? Ciphering this is going to take some perseverance for sure. The psychologist pointed to a phenomenon in humans, and yes, I believe one of the anger management counselors brought it up as well. The idea that people oftentimes will bottle their rage. Garfield the cat here, well, he could be bottling his anger inside, shoving it deep into his cat gut to ignore and deal with it at a later time. Well, not exactly right. Garfield, he's already acted out. He's already stolen the pipe. He's smoking the pipe. He's already dealt with his anger. He's already lashed out so psychologically. What is going on here? What is this cat doing? And how does it impact his owner, John Arbuckle, psychologically? Well, Garfield is angry. He is acting on his anger. But is this passive anger or aggressive anger? Passive. It's passive because Garfield has a problem with John specifically. He's choosing a passive way of dealing with that problem. He has not confronted John and said, John, I have a problem with the way you've decorated this room. I am a cat, I am colorblind, and this room sends me into a rage. You've created a rage room for me here, and I don't like it. I want you to change it. Instead of that confrontational approach, though, Garfield has chosen to steal John's pipe. And that, in turn, angers John. But John decides to be aggressively angry and yell at Garfield. So now, instead of a calm conversation between the two respectful parties, you have two heated, angry individuals, each with a problem and no direct line of solving it. The layered emotions here tell a story with tight, focused brevity that would make Hemingway weep. This is an entire drama in 3 panels, people. But let's not be remiss and miss the humor of the situation, the absurdity of it all. For certainly, there is a reason that the visual shorthand of drama includes both the crying mask and the laughing mask. Comedy and tragedy complement each other and meld together to create drama, tension, the height of humanity, the peak of art that reflects back to us our own condition. And here, in its basest form, we can laugh at this comic, yes, comic, in which a cat smokes a pipe. Huh. When was the last time you've seen such a thing in your life? Never, I presume. I certainly never have. The Greek muse, Thalia's presence, is strong in this work of art here. Comedy. It is comedy. And if you look at the structure again, you'll see this perfect form of thirds work magically from the transmission of yes, a joke. The joke. It is as old as time. Even cavemen told jokes, and the jokes are here is that John has lost his pipe, or thinks he has. He has, but lo and behold, it is the cat Garfield who has the pipe. And surprise, the cat is smoking. Again, the transition from setup to punchline takes place between a second and third panel, but make no mistake, the comic is more than a comic, yes. It is funny, of course it is. It is operating at the height of sophisticated humor, on par with any of Shakespeare's piercing wit. On one hand, Garfield the comic, with John the man, humor as art. On the other, Garfield the comic, with John the man, stirring, no, riveting drama, as with everything, it is tension and release. Tension and release. A cycle. I keep returning to this idea because it is so omnipresent. Yes, you could, and yes, I have done this on more than one occasion. You could print this comic strip on a giant piece of paper. The dimensions would be something like 34 inches by 11 inches. Now, tape the ends together with the comic facing inward, stick your head in the middle of the Garfield loop, and read the first panel. John is reading the newspaper. He feels something at the end table. Second panel. He sets the newspaper down. Something is not right. Now where could my pipe be, he thinks. And then, the payoff. The third panel. Garfield has John's pipe and he is smoking it. But aha! The paper is in a loop around your head. So you can see that once again, John is in a seat reading the paper and so on. You can literally read this comic strip for an eternity. I spent many a relaxing Sunday afternoon reading this strip over and over, reminding me of the Portuguese death carvings, which always begin and end with the same scrawled image. So, this idea of repetition of the beginning, the end, and the end beginning the beginning. It's not new. It's an ageless tradition among the best storytellers humanity has ever offered, and I'm not wrong to include cartoonist Jim Davis in that exalted set for this particular strip alone. I'm not foolish enough to deny that great art is subjective. Divisive even, and that some people see this Garfield strip and shrug with no real reaction, but I will say that I believe everyone in this world should see it, at the very least see it. You should all see it, read it, spend time with it, spend an hour reading it. What's an hour? Yes, you could watch some television program, you could play some fast-paced video game or computer game. Yes, you could do all those things, but it's just an hour. And if you give the strip a chance, if you look into John Arbuckle's eyes, if you look into John Arbuckle's soul, you might find what you're really looking into your own soul. It is self-discovery. That is what I'm talking about here. You have the opportunity, the possibility. It could change you. Don't be afraid. You know, just last week, I was eating lunch near the municipal court, like I do every Thursday, and there was a plumbing van parked in front of a man, a plumber, would step out from the court and retrieve something every so often. A few times this happened. I thought nothing of it, just a plumber doing some work at the municipal court, and then he came out and looked through his van and it was clear. He couldn't find something. I noticed and I thought, oh, that's sort of similar to the Garfield comic in a way. Someone looks for something, can't find it, but yes, that probably happens billions of times a day around the world. But then, this plumber puts his hands on his hips, and then he scratches his head and he says aloud, "Now where could my pipe wrench be?" Well, at this, I leaped off the bench. A sandwich still in hand, I rushed over. I shouted, "What is that you said?" He looked at me and he said, "What? I can't find my pipe wrench." No. Say it like how you just said it." He scratched his head and he repeated, "Now where could my pipe wrench be?" I slapped him on the back and said, "Garfield!" He looked so confused, so I said it again. And then I said, "Your orange cat took it." Then I laughed and laughed, and he smiled and went back to the courtroom. I walked away, knowing that the plumber and I, two complete strangers, bonded over this Garfield comic. You see, life imitates art, becomes a common ground. I have a feeling that if I see this plumber again, we'll be sharing stories like two old friends, because we've been united by art. We have a common love for Jim Davis and his characters, his writings, the humor, the drama, that rascal Garfield the cat. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering what I was having for lunch that day, it was a ham sandwich with an apple and potato chips in a bag. I had a soda as well. I think it's important to view the pipe strip in philosophical terms. We'll touch briefly on the notion of existentialism, that the theme is very prevalent to the strip. Garfield is in fact a modern existential anti-hero. But if Garfield embodies the bewilderment in a meaningless life, what is John? What are the telltale signs that inform John's philosophical standpoint? His approach, what style of thinking he represents? John is depicted as being grounded in the material world, a world of things. He is surrounded by objects. He touches these objects, he interacts with them. The newspaper, the end table, the chair, his clothes, all these physical things make up John's world. And in some case, even his cat Garfield is an object to him, a thing. The first ideology that comes to mind when thinking of objects in the tangible world is pragmatism. Is John Arbuckle a pragmatist? His beliefs stem from a useful, coherent view of his environment, a sort of cause and effect understanding of his world as it helps him. A. Deduce that his pipe is missing, and B. Catch his cat Garfield using the pipe. This kind of empirical and logical thinking lends credence to the idea that John is indeed a pragmatist, although it is hard to entirely ignore the rest of the Garfield comic canon. While Garfield is consistently anarchaic and embraces chaos and absurdity of life, John Arbuckle exhibits an erratic, unpredictable mix of philosophical behaviors. At times, he is borderline delusional, an idealist, an almost slap-happy version of Don Quixote. Other moments, he is rigid, nearly to the point of being obsessive, somewhat like a structuralist. And certainly his streaks of sarcasm and negativity that classify him as a skeptic. Isn't there some universal truth to this approach? How can any one man, how can John Arbuckle be just one thing? How can any of us just be one thing? We're an amalgamation of ideas of emotion, conducts and functionings, thoughts and feelings. John Arbuckle may very well inhabit tenets of nearly every major philosophical tract known to man. We all might. Characters are reduced to make them recognizable, definable. A story needs a good guy, a story needs a bad guy, but rarely is one person defined in such black and white terms. Even Garfield, all of his bad behavior, Machiavellian motivation, and general ne'er-do-well attitude can be kind and thoughtful. Just have to find that rare strip. Speaking philosophically about the entire Garfield franchise is an incredibly accurate depiction of life. Its bold lines and bright colors merely a facade, a red herring, a lie. This cartoon is not a cartoon at all. It's not a caricature. It is not a caricature despite adopting caricature as its visual style and tone, but I don't really like to speak in broad, sweeping generalizations about Garfield. The comic has been running for over 30 years, and to try to boil that all down is just, well, it's impossible. I think the only way that any historian worth his salt will agree with me is to look at individual moments, isolated instances, single comic strips. Can I discuss this one strip in the context of the entire run of Garfield? Yes. I'd do that in just as a film historian might analyze one movie in relation to the history of all movies, or war enthusiasts might look at a single battle's impact on an entire war. Pipe strip is just an instance in the lives of John and Garfield. Perhaps John is not a pragmatist at all. Let's look at this again. Maybe John is exhibiting the traits of a rationalist thinker. His question, "Now where could my pipe be?" is a clue that his thought process stems from the early rationalist questions posed by René Descartes. René Descartes. The well-known quote, "I think before I am," attributed to Descartes is applicable. Another close look at the strip, we can see that Jim Davis chose to draw John thinking his question, "Now where could my pipe be?" John does not speak this question aloud, so Jim Davis is exploring the mind-body duality. John's question operates on the level of literal question, but it also examines the nature of reality. Jim Davis' epistemological approach tells us something about the human condition. John's thoughts remain the focal point of this strip. The comic is quite literally centered around his thought. Now where could my pipe be? This is reality. This is where cognition and the power and function of the mind take over. As Plato believed, the body is just a shell for John Arbuckle. Yes, he can use his physical body to read the newspaper, to cross his legs, but these inputs of touch, sight, hearing, etc., these senses are the triggers of the mind. As we see here, the mind is something greater. It is the originator of ideas, and the ideas are forever, immortal. Immortality through thought, a major theme in literature and philosophy. And isn't that what Mr. Jim Davis himself has achieved? Will he live forever? The universe will continue to spread outward, and entropy will turn a chaotic infinity into a homogeneous controlled system. This will take billions of years, and in that time, humans will push technology to heights we can't imagine. We'll explore and inhabit space, occupy more and more of the universe, just as time allowed our ancestors to multiply in numbers and populate more of the earth. And as the specific people come and go, their physical bodies will be born and grow and die, but their thoughts will remain. And Jim Davis's comics, his glorious Garfield comics, are recorded ideas of his that will still be there. Even when the Earth is no longer inhabitable and humanity has long since moved away to bigger planets, they'll carry with them a record we all keep, mark my words, and look what we've started. What is the internet? What is the online world, if not a record, a never-ending feed of ideas, immortal ideas, forever placed in the ether of dualism. What is an idea? Where does it live? How does it manifest itself? Can it live forever? Will it live forever outside of these physical husks of ours, our bodies? And John Arbuckle and Garfield, stated merely as thoughts, but they become so much more. That old cliche rings true. They've taken on a life of their own, and life may not be what we think. Life brings to mind a beating heart, breathing lungs, unblinking eyes. But the real life is in our imaginations, and who better embodies the definition of imagination if not a simple man, a cartoonist, who puts his ideas on paper so that they may live on, so that our children, our children's children, and their children's children's children can access the wealth of ideas that we've accumulated thus far. They will plug themselves into an informational grid, and they will have access. They will read every Garfield comic. 80,000 years from now, a child will see simple John Arbuckle reading a newspaper. He will feel around for something, but that something is not there. He will lift his head and think, now where could my pipe be? And Garfield will be there smoking the pipe, and John will yell, Garfield! And what then? 80,000 years from now, the child reading the comic will smile, and that smile will transcend space and time and the physical limitations of this existence, whatever they may be, however many dimensions exist. There will always be Garfield, and there will always be its creator, Jim Davis. My throat hurts so fucking much. Oh my fucking god. Oh my god, I did it. My throat itches so much. Oh my god. Yeah, I need to hydrate. I have to pee really bad too. Oh my god. The people are actually here to watch this. Okay, I'm gonna end it because I'm gonna download this later. Weird cult initiation, but okay, I'm in. Good job. Yay! Okay, I'm gonna hop in Discord. We can hang out in Discord, but I'm gonna end this so that I can download it. Bye!